Christy, I've spent several $100s today just to make my blade twisted. We're going to show you the top and tilt kit from Summit Hydraulics today. I'm going to try to show you a lot of the installation details, some of the trade-offs that Summit has chosen when they've built this kit. Let me just say straight up, the kit is not perfect, but there's good reasons for that. This is a challenging problem, not easy to solve cleanly, and we're going to walk through a lot of those details. Let's get started. Any errors and updates that we find will be corrected in a pinned comment and in the description. First, I'll show you the function, and you'll see it's not perfect. Some of that's me. I'll just hold the button. That's the tilt. Hey, take some time to press that like button while you're watching this thing go back and forth. The top is smooth. And please double check that you're still subscribed. The tilt is not. I'll explain all of that as we get further into it. But for now, I want you to see the motion, the extremities of the motion. You can tell that the blade's down on the right side at this point, if you're facing forward. And it's down on the left side at this point. The top link here has a lot of motion. Actually contacts my toolbox here. My toolbox is probably mounted uniquely. Okay, let's look into it in more detail. We're also going to look at the larger system for the 2R, 3E, 3R. Yeah, hang around for that. It's my objective in this video to leave no stone unturned with respect to top and tilt kits for subcompact and compact tractors. To that end, it might get a little boring to some of you for parts of it. Use the chapter feature in YouTube. You can step along to the different sections where we're going to talk about different items. So if you already have that item covered and understood, you can move to the next one. But if you're new to all of this or you need a little bit of a refresher, we're going to try to go through in some detail, quite a lot of detail actually, about how we get a subcompact tractor or a compact tractor fitted with a top and tilt kit. To that end, let's start with the hydraulics necessary for a tractor. All the subcompact tractors, the BX, the 1025R, the Coyote CS, Massey GC, all of these tractors don't offer much or don't offer enough in the way of rear hydraulics to be able to use a top and tilt kit with factory parts. So you have to add on some rear hydraulics somehow. So I'm going to go through one here, and this is from Summit Hydraulics. Most of the parts we're using today are from Summit Hydraulics. Use code TTWT there, by the way, to get a 5% discount, and we'll put some part numbers, representative part numbers here on the screen as we're watching. Now, when it comes to these rear hydraulics, Summit now has custom kits for almost every brand. I mean, there's a huge list of brands that they have custom kits that are specifically designed to fit on this particular brand. The way these kits work is that they plug into the Power Beyond. Okay, if you've got a backhoe, you're already equipped with a Power Beyond, and that's these connections here. Typically, you would have these two hoses that connect to each other. In this case, you put this kit on and you essentially insert those. But so you unplug those two hoses and you insert right in this kit right in there, right? So one end of it's plugged into one aspect of your Power Beyond, the other end is plugged into the other end of your Power Beyond. It couldn't be more simple than that. There is a pressure and a return, and on this tractor you can see a return here on the R, you can see a P here, and there is also a pressure and a tank P and a T on the port here, so it's relatively easy to hook up there. Now Summit offers these in two flavors. They offer one that's got a front third function kit as well. So in addition to what you need for the rear, they've got one that'll go onto the joystick, or sometimes two of these functions that'll go onto the joystick so you can operate your front third function. That's what we're seeing here. You don't have to get that. If you've already got a front third function for your tractor, you don't have to get that. But in this case, we've got 4 valves. This bottom one here is going to the front third function. The other 3 are exposed right here to the rear. Again, this is available for any compact tractor, a custom kit specific to fit that tractor. So other than the Power Beyond connection, the only connection you need is electrical for that. Now this is the 2038R, a larger compact tractor, and most larger compact tractors offer some upgraded rear hydraulic valves. In this case, this tractor offers 2 rear hydraulic valves, and we're using both of them, one for the top link and one for the side link. So in this case, we're using factory hydraulics. It's add-on, so it's really kind of dealer add-on, but it is at least OEM hydraulics rather than a Summit kit that can be added on. Now you can still use a Summit kit on a tractor like this should you need more than 2 valves, but in this case I'm illustrating it on the factory hydraulics of the tractor. Okay, so there's several different options you can do this. Each valve has 2 hoses, right, out and back in for the oil. It has to be able to make a loop. And that's really all there is to it. If you can use the factory ones, they're usually going to be cleaner and nicer than an add-on. On the other hand, they're a lot more expensive and sometimes not available. Now you've heard me talk over and over about this Summit kit, and I'm very happy with this kit with one exception. And I must address that one exception. In fact, I've talked about it before. The valves that Summit has chosen here, all 4 of these valves, they have leak down issues, okay? And apparently they chose them for cost purposes. And by leak down, what I mean is you'll have your top link or your side link or any rear attachment you've got, and it will gradually go down. Gravity will take its effect on it because oil will leak back through these valves, okay? It's not leakage that you see externally, but it leaks back through these valves and it doesn't maintain the pressure. There are a couple of different approaches that Summit could have used to solve this. The best approach, okay? The best approach would have been to have used more expensive valves that don't have as much leak down issue. On the other hand, I issued a poll on YouTube at one point asking people would they pay the increased costs. Okay, this would be a significant more cost to get the better valves, or are they willing to deal with the leak down issues? And quite frankly, it was stunning. Most people said, I'll take the leak down issues. I can't afford essentially a doubling of cost on this valve kit for the better valves, and I get it. So what Summit has tried to do is they have added these check valves. So this right here, I've only got it on 1 valve. Okay, I added it right here, and I added it in another video. We'll put a link to that video here in the cards and in the description below, where I added this check valve. And this check valve will prevent any leak down. So this one right here will not leak down. What I didn't understand at the time of that video, I should have, but I didn't fully understand, is that there are side effects to the check valve. And you saw the side effects early in this episode. You saw it jerking on the way down. It's not getting quite enough flow, not getting quite enough pressure to allow that to go smoothly and keep this check valve open. The other aspect is it's almost impossible to relieve the pressure from these connectors. Typically we tell you to run the valve both ways, or in the case here we turn the electric switch on and run the valve both ways. It's impossible to do that because you can't relieve the pressure, because the check valve prevents that from happening. Okay, so there's some significant downsides to these check valves. They're not a great solution. That, of course, in addition to the fact that they stick out another inch or inch and a half here. So I want you guys to understand that even though I like these Summit products, and even though I'm endorsing them, there are weaknesses, and I'm trying to let you know about those weaknesses and the trade-offs associated with it. And there'll be more trade-offs we're going to talk about through this video. This is just a family discussion, right? I mean, life is trade-offs, and so that's where we are on this series of products. We've got lots of other episodes where we detail these kits. We show you all the different rear options. Quite frankly, for the top and tilt, this is the best kit. I mentioned earlier that if you had a backhoe, you were ready to go. If you don't have a backhoe, all of the tractors that I've mentioned, all the subcompact tractors have a Power Beyond kit available. And I believe they're almost always called Power Beyond. It's a standard term. So you should be able to get that from your dealer. In a lot of cases, Summit already has one. And so you can even save a few dollars there by getting a Power Beyond kit from Summit to be able to make this work. The reason we use the Power Beyond is general compatibility, right? It makes a nice approach to be able to connect into these systems, and even in the name you can kind of deduce that it's hydraulic power beyond the tractor's hydraulic system. Well, that's what's going on here, right? And this is providing that hydraulic system externally, in a sense, to the tractor. Just extending that hydraulic loop that we've talked about in some of those other videos. Well, let's take a close look at the factory lift links, we might call them right here, right, or side links. This is the side link that typically goes on the left-hand side of the tractor, okay? And this adjustable side link goes on the right side of the tractor. So if you want to do adjustments to your rear blade or rear attachment to allow it to angle, you can use this adjustable side link to get the job done. The whole purpose of this top and tilt kit, or the tilt part of the kit, is to make that hydraulic, to make that quick, something you can do, you know, while you're sitting on the tractor. The reason I want to show you these links, I want to show you where they are and a little bit about how they're angled. And now we're going to take a closer look at the replacement side link and some of the choices and trade-offs that have been made by Summit on this approach. Some background information here on these lift links, just to set the stage here. One of the issues that we have with the subcompact tractors is they just don't lift high enough, right? And so what I have proposed in the past, is probably 7 years ago in a video, I proposed that you buy an extra one of these turnbuckle links and replace this fixed length with a turnbuckle. Notice that I've got mine adjusted shorter, right? By using a turnbuckle on both sides, you can shorten lift link length, and by doing that, you increase your lift height. I haven't talked about it for 7 years on videos for one reason, and that is that it's not a perfect replacement. When I turn this one over and try to replace that other lift link, this doesn't quite fit. And it's worse than just, see, you can tell that it's not a perfect fit. This angle here is different. And so what happens is that as you raise and lower, when you have these on both sides, as you raise and lower the attachment, it kind of goes like this, right? So it's less than perfect. So I had multiple goals with the hydraulic side link. In addition to being able to hydraulically lift and lower one side to be able to create an angle, I felt that if we did this right, we could achieve the higher lift height, the increased lift height in certain situations at the same time. So what I wanted to achieve was, I wanted this link here to go on the fixed side, right? I wanted it to go over here, and then I could choose to have this turnbuckle in any of 3 different mechanisms. I could have it all the way tight, which would be equivalent to this being all the way retracted. That's for maximum lift height. I could have it halfway down, which would give me even adjustability as far as tilt, right? Or I could have it all the way down, which would give me the deepest, 3-point hitch approach. Well, Summit apparently didn't get that message when I tried to communicate that. So they specifically made this link for the right-hand side. And you can tell that it's essentially a perfect match for the right-hand side. I looked into trying to put this on the other side, but I couldn't because of how the fittings here attach, and when they're underneath like this, we'll show you on the tractor, there's just no way I could get the hoses to be back in there. And again, the angle is improper. So my desired design was to be able to replace the fixed link rather than replacing the adjustable length. But this is what we got, guys. So this kit right here is made to replace the adjustable link. Could you use it over here? Well, I don't think so because of the way the fittings come out here, but perhaps you might be able to figure out a way. But even so, this hook right up here is not at the right angle, right? It's never going to match up with this left-hand link. The top hook here was made to be correct, made to fit the right hand rather than the left hand. Notice how these angles are opposite each other. Now here I'm showing you a side link for a larger tractor, okay? Maybe even larger than a 3R tractor. We'll get into that a little bit more later. But I'm going to contrast what we see between this larger one and this small one here for the Subcompact 1025R. The first thing you notice is there is no check valve on this one. There just was not room to put a check valve in here. We talked about the need for a check valve earlier because the summit valves leak down slowly. So in here we have no check valve. In the larger ones we do, okay? So we wouldn't need the check valve up in the summit kit for the larger ones, but we do for this smaller one. Now, another difference you can tell, I mean, obviously it's a lot smaller. This one only has a 2-inch stroke, okay? The stroke you can kind of see right in here. This is on one side of it, of the plunger in there, and this is on the other, so your stroke can only be that long. That's the 2 inches, the difference between the fully extended length and the fully retracted length. That's what they mean by the stroke. This one has a much longer stroke than that, right? It's got a 6-inch stroke or something like that. Again, this is a limitation just simply because of this space, right? This is what we had to work with right here. And when you have that kind of a limit, then you're going to have to limit the stroke on these cylinders. Makes perfect sense to me. You know, it seems like this could have been down here a little bit further to maybe have given us a 3-inch stroke, but I'm sure that may be a cost issue. They may be trying to find some off-the-shelf cylinder. I have no idea exactly why this is only 2 inches instead of maybe 2.5 or 3. Of course, the limitations of the 2-inch stroke means that your tilt is not going to be as much as it is on that larger cylinder. Yet another reason why I was hoping to use it on the fixed side, and then we could have done some of the tilt manually over on this side. So, is this a big deal? I don't really know if this is a big deal or not at this point. Typically, if you're going to be digging some sort of a ditch or even putting a crown in your driveway, you don't need very much tilt. And with these little tractors, it's not like you can sock it in and dig 6 inches deep with the side of your blade. No, you have to do this a little bit at a time anyway, right? So if you can get a 1-inch tilt, for instance, and maintain that tilt, then as you can take off 1 inch at a time and just keep, and each time you go through, it will tilt an additional inch, right? So you can tell it after a few trips, it doesn't take much. And we've actually shown that even in Honduras. When we were there, we lowered the box blade with the manual link, and after trip after trip after trip, even 4 or 5 trips, all of a sudden you're seeing a significant tilt in your grade. So it may not be a big deal that this is limited, and quite frankly, I don't know that there's a lot they can do, you know, other than this additional 1/2 inch right here. I don't know what else could be done. To my knowledge, there are only 2 places currently that you can get a side link to fit a 1025R tractor. One of them is Rite Hydraulics, and he's usually 6 months behind. I mean, incredibly delayed. Well, why? Because he makes them custom. Every one he makes is a custom fit, and it's just slow for him, right? He makes them one at a time. He doesn't have any employees. It's just how much he can get done. This is kind of the opposite approach, right? This one's going to be a little less expensive, actually probably significantly less expensive, and you can order them now. So these are the only 2 places, Summit Hydraulics, Rite Hydraulics, Fitrite. I think the website is, you can search for that and maybe find it. You'll have to reach out to him to see what his current delay is, but this is the only off-the-shelf one, right, that is available as of this video. If there's another one that we end up partnering with, we're working with one other company that may come up with a solution. We'll put a link in the description or in a pinned comment to that one as well. But for right now, this is the only choice. So when I mentioned some of the trade-offs, some of the negatives, well, I'm thrilled to have this option. This is the first time I've been able to show something in the entire 8 years. There's been no benefit to showing the Fitrite solution because the delay is so long. Building up even more demand was not going to help him, right? So I'm excited about this product. Don't take my nitpicking of it as being saying not to get it. I'm just trying to make sure that we fully investigate the limitations and the features and the benefits. Let's take a brief look at the top link before we mount it. This is a top link from AgriStore USA that we've talked about at length and that I'm really happy with. AgriStoreUSA.com, you use code TTWT there as well. I can say that this one from Summit on the outside looks almost identical. I don't know if there's any difference. It's the same stroke. It's both of them have a check valve, etc. They look just essentially identical. I know that this one's made in Italy. I don't know where this one's made. I think it's made in India. What I want to show here is that the check valve here can be used in a lot of different angles, approaches. See, I've taken this check valve, I've loosened these fittings here, and you can see this is the way it ships. I've turned that downward, right? And I've done that just for what I thought was the best hose fitment. Another thing you can do is take these out and turn that around, essentially moving that check valve down here, like this. So all these options are available to you. You can choose to do it the same way I'm doing it, but what you might find is that on your tractor, it's best fit a different way. So I don't think this is a one-size-fits-all approach, and I do think that we're going to find that hose routing is one of our biggest challenges that we're going to face. Let's take a close look at the mechanical part of the installation here. We're just replacing this lift link, and so we have to connect it to the top up there, to the bottom down here. So we'll do the bottom first. The bolt is attached to the turnbuckle here on the small tractor, and then this is a lock nut right here. The main part of this bolt has a larger diameter, so we can tighten this fairly tight without a problem. But we do have to hold this while we tighten. It's not incredibly difficult to hold, but if we don't, the turnbuckle gets... if we don't hold this, it spins and the turnbuckle becomes uneven here, right? Only one side of it is spinning. We don't have to tighten it real tight. It's a lock nut. If we get it too tight, we might actually hinder that movement, but you shouldn't because of the way the bolt's made. Now, you can turn this cylinder as necessary, right? It might be a little too tight for your hands, but once you get it attached on one end, you'll be able to turn it, or once you get the hoses put on, you'll be able to turn it. So we'll just attach the other end, put that pin in right there. I've already got my hoses put on. I wouldn't recommend that you put your hoses on until you get the cylinder all the way attached. So as we look at putting these hoses on, this is a BSP-04 connection on the cylinder itself, and that screws right in there. This is JIC, okay? You see that flare inward type connection there? So there's a couple of ways you can do this. Actually, there's 3 different choices here. You can come straight out and put the hose straight on here. They provide an additional JIC to JIC elbow. This is a 45, okay? If you look in there, you can see that that taper would fit right in there. So you can put this elbow, and again, the hose here has JIC female on it, so you can use the 45, or you can use the 90, okay? Again, the 90-degree JIC to JIC. So you've got those choices, and they give you enough 45s and 90s that you can make some choices about where you want to put those 90s, where those 45s go best. You can put some of the 45s here, you can put some of the 45s here, you can use straight if you want to. You've got that kind of flexibility. As long as you stick with these JIC threads, the hoses here are JIC as well. So you've got that flexibility. And on the other end, again, JIC here, we used a 90-degree JIC elbow. And then there's adapter to get you from the JIC up to the larger ORB threads for this quick coupler, okay? And again, you can use 45s there. You could go in straight. All this is flexible for your choice within the kit. For this one, I chose the 90s here because I wanted to use the 45s somewhere else. You know, you just kind of have to balance that with the selection you have. These fittings are cheap. If you decide that you needed more 45s or more 90s, you can get these any hydraulic store locally, or you can get them from Discount Hydraulic Hose or Summit Hydraulics. Just ask for the fittings independently. They'll, you know, they don't cost much, right? Use code TTWT at either of those places. I've got the left side here out of the way just so that we can better see what's going on. And I want to talk about another choice that Summit has made on the kit they sent me. I've provided feedback. Hopefully this is a modification we can get made soon. They've chosen to include 3/8 hoses, and these hoses are fairly stiff. They're 3/8 hoses are always going to be more stiff than 1/4-inch hose. As you can see, this very small diameter cylinder here, we do not need much oil to move that cylinder. Quite frankly, any of the cylinders that we're dealing with, we don't need a lot of oil. So 1/4-inch hoses would be much more flexible and would just be a better approach for this than 3/8-inch hoses. I've asked them to include an option for 1/4-inch hoses. We'll see. I've also asked them to include an option with no hoses at all, so that you could work with your local hydraulics shop to get something custom that might better fit your scenario. And again, customer choices we think is the best approach. So what they've included is 4-foot hoses, okay? And when you look at these hoses, you can see that they're long. When I plug them in here, they're going to be way looped up at the top. And when I first saw this, I thought, oh my goodness, this looks awful. It's growing on me, and I'll explain more about that in a minute. For now, I'm going to set these aside rather than plug them in, and I'm going to show you the top link install. The first step on the top link install is to remove this hook. This is the hook to hold the original top link when it's not attached. And this hook is not large enough to hold the hydraulic one, and it's really just in the way, right? So we're going to tear something up. In my case, the little holder down here wasn't holding it anyway, but even with that, it's in the way, and you'll see that in a minute. I think the best idea is just take it off, get it out of the way, and move on. You want to put this end of the cylinder next to the tractor, okay? Not the moving end. You don't want these hoses and all of this mechanism moving back and forth. If you put it on this way, all of this would move back and forth and create even more of a challenge that I'm going to show you here in a little bit. But with this approach, you minimize that movement. There's still a lot of movement, but you minimize it. What I suggest to start with is to put the cylinder in and try it, okay? And I'm doing it, what I decided was the wrong way for me, but I'm doing it so I can show you why. So just put the pin in, and then you've got to rotate the cylinder through its paces, right? And when I get up to the top, even with this check valve, when I get it this high, I'm hitting that bracket, okay? So I could maybe move the check valve up, and I'd have a little more clearance, but I'd still, you know, potentially hit it right there. So what I chose to do was to turn it over. By turning it over, I have plenty of downward motion yet, and now if I do hit way up here, I'm not hitting anything sensitive, okay? And along with that, I rotated that check valve so that the hoses came out to the side. If I had them going straight down, then I began to interfere with the PTO shield there. So this seemed like the best approach to me. I used 45s here to try to get the hoses away from this lift mechanism. I don't have this left side hooked up yet, again, just to kind of free up some space to be able to show you all this. This is the challenge. There's not much space in here, okay? So while you might look at this and say, well, you know, Summit made a mistake by including such long hoses, I've had trouble with shorter ones that I've tried, right? They bind all the time. I talked to my brother Tom about their hoses on larger equipment, and he said, you know what? We find that having too much hose and looping that hose, you know, just having it stick up or stick out and loop, turns out to be safer. Turns out not to bind the hose as often as trying to make them real tight and real short to fit. So at first look, you might have even seen it in the first scene. Wow, this looks like a lot of hose. But I think it may be the best approach here. Okay, I'm getting ready to connect the top link hoses, and I'm choosing a port that does not have a check valve on it up here because the check valve is built into the cylinder. Now I recommend you work on your hose routing and getting these 45s and 90s set up at the angle you want as much as possible before you actually put oil in the system, because once you get oil in the system like I have, then you're just going to be making a mess every time you make any adjustment. And that's where we are here. I didn't really like how these were arranged, so now I'm not promising that this is my long-term arrangement for these hoses, but I'm certainly not recommending to Summit at this point to shorten the hoses. And when I first got the package out, I thought, oh my goodness, what am I going to do with those long hoses? This may be the best approach. We have almost innumerable areas where we can have trouble here, right? So we can get hoses bound up under our quick hit. They could get around here, right? And then when the top link goes in and out, you scar the hoses or totally rip them off. We have issues with the lift links in here. These lift link hoses can get caught there. We can get caught around the toolbox. We can get pinched under the top link. There's just so many different ways. I don't know of any other way but to run it through all of the motions and try to exaggerate what you can do with the hoses, just like we're seeing here, and see if we can find a way to make them work. In this case, it seems like it would help me a lot just to keep all four of these hoses together right up here. And while this looks ugly as can be, it seems to keep the hoses out of harm's way. So I kind of like that. I may have these angles here not perfect. I maybe could twist them in just a little bit, but I will say that I have some problems with the lift link here that I'm trying to avoid as well. So again, this may not be the final answer, but this is what you're going to have to go through on your tractor. You're going to have to figure out what works for you. Another challenge you run into, just like you're seeing here, is as we exercise those hoses, we can break some of those fittings loose. And I find it to be a huge challenge to get all of this put together and tight in a way that is safe and won't tear something up. Just not much space in here. You may have noticed that the up and down goes way too fast. And remember, these are electric valves, so there's really nothing I can do about that on the button itself. It's not like I can be more gentle. You know, this is as small a movement as I can make right here in the current configuration. I talked about these fittings having JIC threads. BoltOnHooks.com has some restrictors for these JIC threads that you can put in line. You put those restrictors in line here or up at that end, either one, on both hoses. So you'll need two restrictors. I think they're $10 each before code TTWT. And that will slow down that oil flow. So less oil going into this cylinder will make it move more slowly, and then you'll have a little more control. The reason this moves so fast is because the cylinder diameter is so small. It doesn't take much oil to move that cylinder. So restricting that oil flow is the best approach to handling that. So you can get those little restrictors. I'll put a link below and show you a picture of it right here from BoltOnHooks.com. Okay, real quickly for the larger tractors, this is the 2R and the 3R. They have two different lengths. They have a, I believe it's 16 to 21 inch and a 16 to 24 inch. I've got both of them here. I highly recommend the shorter one, the 16 to 21. And you might say, well, why wouldn't I want the more length? Well, first of all, even though they say 16 to 21 and 16 to 24, this one is clearly longer in its retracted position. My measurements show it being more of an 18 to 24 instead of a 16 to 24. Even the 16 to 21 is longer. Of course, that's extended somewhat now, but I had them side by side. Even the 16 by 21 is longer than the bracket that you're replacing. Notice I've put mine on the left-hand side so that I still have the turnbuckle on the right. I really like that approach. It gives me a lot more flexibility. This extra stroke, we don't have the stroke issues of the 1 series. There's plenty of angle in this one. Hopefully I can show you this in a later episode. There are still some space restrictions in here, but it's not bad at all. This is much better. I still wish we had 1/4 inch hoses. There is no need for 3/8, and 1/4 inch would provide me a lot more flexibility and would allow us to kind of just have a lot more flexibility on the routing. One issue I ran into on this one is this fork is too wide. I had to pinch it really hard with a pair of water pump pliers to even get this key back in, and even then I couldn't get the washer in that needs to go back there. So I need to take this apart and put it in a press. They sent me a prototype several months ago. It had this issue, and I notified them of it. And yeah, it's still there. So this is too wide here. It needs to be about a 1/4 inch narrower so that you can get this washer on. Folks, I've tried to squeeze a lot of information into this video, probably more than you bargained for, more than you signed up for when you clicked. But I hope that you can see some of the challenges that we've had to deal with here, and you can see how Summit has coped with some of them pretty well, and others, maybe they need another spin or two. I knew about this product. It's been available for pre-order for quite some time. I was not willing to really publicize it and share it with you until I installed it for myself, because I knew there was just too many variables here, too much difficulty for us to go through without having it in our hands. So that's what we've done here. This kit's not perfect, but it's the best one that you can get in a short time frame, right? If you want the fit right when you have to wait 6 months and pay a lot more money, this one is cost effective. It will work on your tractor. It will allow you to do some quick angling. So I recommend it. I just recommend it with the knowledge that it's not perfect, right? I mean, that happens on a lot of different products, and in this case, the challenges are huge. So I get it. There's a lot of information here. I could have easily made a mistake in this presentation, so I'll put any corrections in the pinned comment or in the description. Hope you guys have enjoyed this. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next time on Tractor Time with Tim. That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weaknesses, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, and difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong.